Good guy, that Mike Garafolo. Joining us just before U.S. Thanksgiving, where he'll eat at least 3 or 4 whole turkeys. It's our NFL Network pal, Mike Garafolo. Mike, I just heard Jerry Jones say it's not crazy that Mike McCarthy could earn himself a contract extension. This is a coach that many thought might be fired after the playoffs last year when the Cowboys lost to the Packers. Now you have this disappointing season, and yet Jerry making an interesting proclamation on his radio show Tuesday. What do you make of it?
It's not crazy. And Jerry Jones has, and every step of the way, defended Mike McCarthy and talked about what a good coach he thinks he is. And this is a consistent 12-ish win coach for them up until this year. And who knows, if Dak Prescott hadn't gotten hurt, maybe they had picked up a couple of games along the way here and got themselves into 9-win territory and potentially into the postseason. He's a good coach. And I thought of this today when I heard Jerry's comments, and I'm like, okay, this is about the 4th or 5th time he's defended him this season. And I'm thinking to myself, if he's not telling the truth, if he's lying, why? What's the upside? Like, what would be the point of telling everybody all along the way that this is not crazy and he's a good coach and all this stuff, and then just not renewing him at the end of the year? It's not like you're trying to bluff anybody. I mean, maybe just to keep this thing respectable up until the Thanksgiving game, which I know is a big game for Jerry, but I don't believe so. I believe he truly believes he's a good coach. And as much as we think that Jerry Jones is this rash decision maker, he's one of the more patient owners, especially when it comes to head coaches throughout the league. So would not be surprised if at the end of this year he decides to extend Mike McCarthy. Maybe it's a short one. We've seen this before with some coaches who get maybe announced like a 4-year deal, but only the first half of it or so is guaranteed. Could be something like that with Mike McCarthy. But if he's the coach of the Cowboys in 25, I will not be surprised because, Jay, it's really not a great batch of coaches that we're looking at. Coordinators, prospective head coaches. The best coach in the cycle might be the one that they already have. And look, I know it's the Cowboys. Everybody wants to fire the coach as soon as the coach is hired. It's hard to be the coach of the Cowboys. I think Jerry Jones is leaning towards patience here, and I like the approach. Okay,
let's talk more about the Cowboys. They're taking on the Giants, little NFC East action on U.S. Thanksgiving, or as we call it here in Canada, Thursday. Mike, some hoped it might be Danny Dimes himself signing with the Cowboys and starting against his former team. But there has been a lot of interest in Daniel Jones since the Giants released him. Curious if you have an update on where he might land. And one more thing for you, Mike. Sounds like Tommy DeVito not 100% coming into this matchup.
Yeah. As of Tuesday night, Daniel Jones has multiple offers from multiple teams and is trying to make a decision here. And maybe he plays it out for a couple more days to see what happens. But I think he should have a decision in the relatively short term. But someone told me earlier on Tuesday within the next 48 hours. Now, one of those teams that he's been kicking around, from my understanding, is the Miami Dolphins, which would make sense because if Tua Tagovailoa, God forbid, suffered another concussion, we know he's going to be out for an extended period. So that's one of the situations where you say it's a good offensive coach. There's a lot of targets on the field potentially, and a quarterback that's been injury prone, and who knows, one hit could knock him out again. So not surprised that they're in the mix. Minnesota's been mentioned. San Francisco's been mentioned. Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings head coach, certainly talked about what he thinks of Daniel Jones. That's a prospective playoff team. There were other teams. The Raiders were involved, but Daniel Jones quickly ruled them out. He's looking for a playoff caliber team and a team that's got a lot of talent, because you don't want to go somewhere where there's not a lot of talent around you and you wind up playing as poorly as you did for the Giants, or potentially even worse. He's trying to set himself up for 25 and beyond. If you could potentially get to a place where you could play with a lot of talent and a good coach, that's where you want to be. So let's see where Daniel Jones ultimately decides. As for Tommy DeVito, who has taken the job that used to belong to Jones, yeah, he wasn't on the injury report on Monday. I was told he was telling everybody he's totally fine. And then all of a sudden on Tuesday, he pops up on the report with a forearm injury, and all of a sudden it's no guarantee he's going to play. Tells the media that he's pretty much hurting all over his body, which is kind of weird. You would think that would happen on Monday, but sometimes, he did describe to people that he felt like he was in a couple of car crashes on Sunday during that game against the Buccaneers. And you've seen it before, and this is no joke. You get into a car crash, and you're okay for a day, and then all of a sudden you feel worse the day after. I think that was kind of what happened here with Tommy DeVito. So we'll keep an eye on this as we get closer, but it's not trending in the right direction, that's for sure, Jay.
Speaking of former New York Giants, how about Saquon Barkley? How about the season he is having for your Philadelphia Eagles, Mike? It is remarkable. Leads the NFL in rushing, went for another 255 yards against the Rams on Sunday, and now there is that MVP talk. There hasn't been a non-quarterback MVP since Adrian Peterson back in 2012. What do you think Saquon would have to do, Mike, to beat out the likes of Patty Mahomes and Josh Allen this year?
Keep doing what he's doing. And Lamar Jackson, I put him in there because he's only had a couple of interceptions to all the touchdowns that he's compiled. And those interceptions were sort of deflected passes and really not necessarily his fault on all of them. And I know he's gotten away with a few here and there. But if Saquon Barkley continues to produce, it's going to be part of the conversation for sure. Now, I still think if he wins it, he's not technically the most valuable player. The Eagles could win 13 games. And if you take away Saquon, maybe they win 11. You take away Jalen Hurts. Let's just talk Jalen, not even an MVP candidate. Take away Jalen Hurts and they go from 13 to 7, 6, whatever, right? So it's always going to be a quarterback if you are strictly looking at it from the valuable standpoint. If you change the name of the award to most outstanding player, I think he'd be running away with it right now. But that's not the way that it is, and most people vote on the valuable part, and it's always going to be a quarterback when it comes to that. But I think he could change some minds, and some people say, yeah, maybe he's not the most valuable player, but the way that he's performing, I'm going to vote. He's going to get a bunch of votes if this continues. Very well could win the award, depending on what those other quarterbacks do. If you don't have a runaway quarterback or huge numbers, which you sort of do already, so maybe I'm talking about this and it's not going to come to fruition. But I think he's definitely going to be in the conversation. And if he doesn't win the award, Jay, I think he's going to get more votes than a non-quarterback than we've seen in recent years for sure.
Mike, you were so kind to do this as you're getting ready for a big holiday down south of the border. So thanks for this, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, Mike. Enjoy it.
You got it. Thank you, Jay. Thanks, everybody.